Hi, welcome to our exegetical task video number 12. In this video, we're going to be looking at task 11. Task 11 is related to the logic of the structure of your passage. This is to explain your paragraph's logic as revealed in your sentence flowchart. I'm going to be transitioning to the PowerPoint presentation. Be sure to find section 11 in your exegetical task packet and turn to that page and be prepared to jot down a few things. Now, the logic in the structure. What are we going to do? We're going to explain the paragraph's logic that's revealed by the sentence flow. Be sure you read Fee section 11.1 prior to doing this task. Examine your sentence flow, paying attention first to the independent clauses. These are the ones flushed to the left of your diagram. If at this point you find out that you've got independent clauses kind of straggling from the left, you probably need to fix your step 7 before doing this step. That way you do have an agreement between what you say here in step 11 and what you've got on your sentence flow in step 7. So these should be the ones, the independent clauses should be flush left on your sentence flow. Write a paragraph explaining the flow between the independent clauses. Articulate the theme that ties them all together. This could be performed by reducing it down to a central thing by looking at the various clauses. All right. Next, write another paragraph for each of the independent clauses, describing how all of the subordinate clauses and phrases relate to the independent clause. So each independent clause has a collection of subordinated elements that are related to it. Describe that relationship. If you have 4 independent clauses, then you'll have 5 paragraphs total. One summarizing the independent clauses as a set, and then one each for each independent clause and all of its subordinated items. This is an example from 1 Thessalonians 1, 2 through 10. So the first sentence there summarizes what's going on with the main independent clauses of this section. 1 Thessalonians 1, 2 through 10 consists of 2 main assertions. Paul's expression of thanksgiving for the Thessalonians and his offering of congratulations to them for their vibrant witness of their faith. And notice that we have the verses broken down to match each of those main clauses. So 2 through 5 is the group of verses that are headed by that independent clause, and then 6 to 10 are headed by the second independent clause. So 2 independent clauses. The third paragraph relates each of the 2 independent clauses to their subordinated material. In Paul's expression of thanksgiving in 1, 2 through 5, that's the first independent clause, Paul emphasizes that prayer is the manner in which his thanks is expressed. He expresses his thanks by praying. In verses 1 to 3. That's the first subordinate matter. Paul details 3 specific areas for which he gives thanks: their faith, their love, and their hope. In verses 4 and 5, Paul explains the reason why he gives thanks for them, that God has chosen them. That's the reason. He also explains how he knows they have been chosen because of the successful manner in which the gospel came to them in word, power, the Holy Spirit, and conviction. So all of these things relate to Paul's assurance that they have been chosen. In the second one, this is the second of the independent clauses. Notice this is a much bigger paragraph. That's because there was a lot of supporting subordinated material for this independent clause. Paul's expression of congratulations to the Thessalonians in 1, 6 to 10 for their vibrant witness emphasizes their imitation of Paul himself, and thereby of the Lord. Their imitation is evident to him because of how they received the word, in much affliction with joy, and inspired by the Holy Spirit. 1:6. Such a beginning resulted in their becoming examples to all the believers in Macedonia and Achaia. This is evident, Paul says, because wherever he goes, he does not need to say anything because people have already heard of the Thessalonians. Specifically, they have heard of how well the Thessalonians took care of Paul and company, and how the Thessalonians converted from idols and intend now to serve the living God and live their lives expecting the return of Jesus Christ, his Son, the one who can deliver them from the wrath of God. So here we have all these subordinated elements pointing right back to the independent clause. This is the relationship between independent clause and all the subordinated stuff. This was a bigger paragraph than the other one because of the amount of subordinated material. But here you have examples of sentence flow and logic based on the project here in 1 Thessalonians 2:10. You'll need to do this for your section in Galatians. You'll need to identify your main independent clauses, show how they relate to each other. The more of them there are, the bigger that paragraph's going to be. And then have separate paragraphs relating all the subordinated material to each independent clause. And those will be bigger or smaller depending on how much subordinate material you have. All right, I'm going to go ahead and include task 12 in this video because these are both very short, and normally when we do this class, these are done in the same week. So task 12 is about rhetoric. A little bit different than sentence flow, but often it doesn't involve a lot of extra or a lot of work beyond what you're doing for task 11. So task 12 here. Task 12 is rhetoric. What are you going to do here? Make a list of all the figures of speech, such as like or as, similes, metaphors, anything like that that you can spot. These are all rhetorical devices. List anything that's hyperbolic, any exaggerations. List the occurrences of direct address and note their significance. So whenever an author directly addresses someone, they do it for a reason. Note any diatribe, any questions back and forth. If you're wondering what diatribe is, think about, for example, Nicodemus and Jesus' conversation with each other. Question upon question and finally some answers. This involves rhetorical questions and answers. Fee gives examples and further sources in the section for Fee. Be sure you look at that before doing this step. Here's an example of several of these rhetorical elements from 1 Thessalonians 1, 2 to 10. We always give thanks for all of you. Possibly hyperbole. Does this happen every second of the day? What does always mean? Always probably means Paul does this quite often. Maybe every time he prays, he includes them, but he's not praying, adding their name every single second of the day. There's a lot of other things going on, such as running down the road from Thessalonica trying to save his life, or presenting the gospel to a people that's not heard. Those are all parts of his day. So this is an expression that we might call an exaggeration. Always giving thanks for all of you. Does he think of each person and name them? Or does he just say, God bless everybody? I thank God for everybody, and that includes everybody because he said everybody. Don't know, but we can categorize both the word always and all as potentially hyperbole. Brothers loved by God. This was part of an address. The other one is you became a model to all the believers. Well, many, maybe even most, but all? It's hard to imagine that Paul isn't just kind of pushing at the edges here in giving the idea of all. What does all mean? Does it mean literally every single believer? Well, there are some believers that might not have heard of the Thessalonians in a different region away from Achaia. So there's a lot of ways to analyze this. If all is limited to Achaia, yeah, perhaps they all did know about it. But in the context, which way is all? You have to look a little bit to see if Paul is meaning all of their local neighbors or all of the global Christians, even those down in Nabatea, which would be hard to imagine. All right, the Lord's message rang out. Well, that's a figure of speech. Most of the time you don't ring out messages, but this is ringing out, a figure of speech like a bell. A bell sends a clanging sound and it goes out and nobody can avoid it if they're in the area. All right, your faith in God has become known everywhere, just like 1:2 and 1:7, example of hyperbole. Rescues us from the coming wrath. It's a figure of speech, like from a storm. Rescuing us from the coming storm. So we get an example that's like something. All right. That's all we're going to do here with step 12. Um, I'm going to sign off here. I ask that God blesses you in this step and guides you as you work on this. Um, I would spend more of your effort on task 11 than on task 12, but there can be some nuggets that can be gleaned from task 12, so be sure that you spend some time thinking through the logical, or the rhetorical, I should say, rhetorical force of different pieces in your passage. Blessings to you, and I'll see you next week.